Hello, everybody. All right, welcome to the Mikestand. Today, of course, is Monday, December the 15th, 2025. Of course, we're about 10 days away from Christmas, so hopefully everybody's getting ready to have a nice time with their families and all that. We're gonna give people a few minutes to come in before we get started. Did have a chance to watch some cartoons today, or including the first appearance of Shorty in the Popeye cartoon Happy Birthdays. Saw quite a bit of Looney Tunes today too when I was watching my cartoons. So, anyways, friendly reminder, of course, to everybody, if you guys haven't already, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage, that'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So, anyways, let's see. Let me go to see if I can drum up some. Oh, actually, better yet, let me do it like this. Here. Yeah, just trying, as I said, just trying to see if I can find some people to join us. Do something here real quick. That's wrong. Let me see if I can. Yeah. Just seeing if we can get a few more people in, possibly. Alright, let's see if anything else has popped up new here. Okay, so again, a friendly reminder, everybody, for on both my YouTube and my Rumble, if you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage. I'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, Feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. With that being said, let's talk about now what's on tap for tonight. So I got a couple articles I'm going to go over from Bounding into Comics here. First is a kind of Marvel related article. Both of them are comic related articles. Comic book. The last 4 issues of Ultimate Wolverine, ordered halfway through writing, will barely cross over with Ultimate Endgame. And then I guess a profile from Mr. Freeze to Catwoman. Here are the 7 most misunderstood Batman villains. So we'll have the wrestling wrap-up, look back at, of course, John Cena's last match and kind of the backlash that happened as a result of how it went down. Of course, get caught up on basically get all caught up on all the latest in WWE and AEW. Look ahead to tonight's Raw. Excuse me. So with that, let's get into this. Actually, I'm going to go off camera here one more time here. Just right back. All right, I'm back. So now let's go ahead and get into this now. So let's get into our first article here and pull that up. All right. All right, so here we go. All right. So the last 4 issues of Ultimate Wolverine, ordered halfway through writing, will barely cross over with Ultimate Endgame, article by Spencer McCulley, published December 13th, which was this past Saturday. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. If this week's Ultimate Wolverine felt more conclusive to Logan's story than its confirmed issue run would suggest, it's not because you're crazy, but rather because the issue was originally intended as a Mutant miniseries actual finale. As Marvel decided to tag on its upcoming epilogue roughly halfway through production, which strangely enough will apparently have very, very little to do with Earth 616's climactic Ultimate Endgame. Oh, look at that. With the final page turn of Ultimate Wolverine Volume 1, Number 12, the whole of this alternate Logan story comes to a close, wrapped in a near-perfect bow. His Winter Soldier past, now fully behind him, newfound resolve to protect the freshly rescued from experimentation Jean Grey, giving him a renewed purpose after the death of his mutant opposition comrades. And his recent encounter with Eurasia's autocratic rulers, setting him on a perfect trajectory to join forces with the Ultimates in their fight against the Maker. But despite the solo aspect of the hero's story coming to a crescendo, the series still has 4 issues to go, its extension having been announced shortly after the release of issue number 8. Speaking to his original plans for the book during a recent interview with CBR's Brian Cronin, series writer Chris Condon recalled, quote, I initially was contracted to do 12 issues. And because of the success of the book, it may have seemed like it would have been a huge success to you. But to me, I was thinking it would be another thing where they go. In smaller quotes here, cult favorite Chris Condon, or whatever. And that would be my lot in life. I did not expect it to blow up in the way that it did. But it was really humbling to have that happen, and it has been a joy every step of the way. Quote, I want to say maybe around issue 7 or 8, in bracket here, was when we got the extension order, unbracketed. Will had an inkling that this might be coming. But I did not know, obviously. But I had the plan for 12, and I liked additional issues to coincide with Endgame. And I said, my thing was, if you can get Alessandro to do it, I'm in. I am in. And sure enough, they got Alessandro to do it. So we are going 13, 14, 15, and 16. I kind of look at it as the coda. It did not really change the plan for 1 to 12. As they're adding on issues, they're obviously going to add on to the story from what is being said. So, all right. So continuing on here, given that the extra order means the final issues of both Ultimate Wolverine and Ultimate Endgame will now release alongside one another next May, speculation as to just what Logan's last rites would entail leaned heavily towards some sort of direct tie-in to said event, possibly in a, quote, self-sacrifice to stop the Maker, on smaller quote, capacity. However, Condon revealed that to Cronin that the series finale will actually have very little to do with the Maker's turn, telling his host, quote, it stays our story, but yes, there are tie-in moments. I will say, so yes, there are certainly things that are spilling over. Let us put it that way, unquote. Directly asked if the book would be an example of a, quote, purple skies crossover, unquote, in parentheses there, a take on the term red sky crossover, smaller quotes, has derived from how numerous tie-in issues of DC's Crisis on Infinite Earths and Night Terrors crossovers were only connected to their main events by the respective appearance of a plot-relevant red or purple sky. Unparenthesis there. Cronin added, quote, or Condon added, quote, yes, and honestly, I do not think that, brackets here, Ultimate's writer, unbracketed, Dennis Camp, or me, or, in brackets here, Ultimate Wolverine editor, Will Moss, or anybody who would really want everybody to have their toes stepped on. I feel like this is the perfect way to do it, where we are still telling the story that we want to be telling, but with the tools that are afforded to us by what is happening in our books, unquote. Quote, I think it is the perfect place to be. You are not having to sit there with document upon document upon document. This person has to get to go here. This has to do this. And this has to do this. And then you write it, and then they changed that in the script. So this is kind of a perfect place to be. Greenish tint on the faces there, not necessarily maybe the most attractive look, but I get barring any unforeseen scheduling changes, the 16th and final issue of Ultimate Wolverine, Volume 1, will tear its way onto shelves next May. All right, so there we go with that one. And now we'll get to the next one here. Before I do get to that, though, I'm going to need to step away from the computer. Hey there, Fishozo. Thanks for popping in. Of course, if you haven't already, if you can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. Anyways, I do need to step away from the computer for a moment. I'll be right back, but I will put some music on to entertain you guys while I'm gone. I'll be right back. quick. And then I'm back and I see I did get another comment here. Hey, Metal. I'm not so friendly, nor do I want to engage. Oh boy. Mr. Sardonic right there. Uh, anyways, um, here we go. So, from Mr. Freeze to Catwoman, here are the 7 most misunderstood Batman villains. Article by Billy Oduori, um, published this past Saturday the 13th. All right, so Gotham is a crucible that forges both supervillains and superheroes. But as Batman's rogues gallery keeps growing, it is prudent to re-examine the perception of some villains perpetuated by pop culture. Current view of many Batman villains was shaped by their portrayal in films like Batman and Robin, and Tim Burton's cinematic take on the Caped Crusader. However, the on-screen versions of these villains are often wildly mischaracterized, as many are a lot less sinister and not inherently evil in their comic book counterparts. The gray line is obviously a constant where these characters are concerned. But based on their backstory, it is fair to say that they are not inherently evil. From well-meaning individuals whose heroic adventures turned tragic to unfortunate victims of mental illness, here are the 7 most widely misunderstood Batman villains. Mr. Freeze, Victor Freeze. Arnold Schwarzenegger portrayed the widely unpopular version of Mr. Freeze in Batman and Robin, but the film character has very little in common with post-crisis Mr. Freeze. In the comics, uh, post-crisis Mr. Freeze in the comics. In the books, Victor Freeze only resorts to cryonics as a means to save his terminally ill wife Nora. His mission is so noble that a branch of Wayne Enterprises funds his research. After being betrayed by his boss, causing an accident that kills Nora and forces him to depend on a cryonic suit to survive, Mr. Freeze goes on a revenge mission. He largely directs his anger at the wrong people and later descends too deeply into villainy, which is unfortunate. However, given the chance, the intelligent cryogenicist, would rather spend his entire life preserving people in ice until a cure for the conditions is discovered, a noble cause that is no longer associated with him. Poison Ivy. Poison Ivy, Pamela Isley. Largely seen as DC's deadliest eco-terrorist, Poison Ivy is another character whose public perception was shaped by the poorly written version of the character in Batman and Robin, as played by Uma Thurman. In the comics, Dr. Pamela Isley cares deeply about the planet and doesn't go after anyone who doesn't deserve it. While she is widely portrayed as a femme fatale who would see the planet be left to plant life only at the expense of humans in the movies, Ivy has a strong motherly instinct too, as seen when she takes in orphans and the homeless multiple times in the books. She still has to fight with Batman because her philosophy doesn't have a place in the real world yet. But she can hardly be considered Gotham's biggest problem. It is fair to say that if corrupt government officials and greedy corporations didn't conspire to destroy the planet, Poison Ivy would never hurt anyone, making her the most important anti-villain in Batman's rogues gallery. Hmm. I think it looks like there's been a bit of an exchange between you two. Let's see what you guys are saying here. Let's see. Crazy that Mr. Freeze's sympathetic background didn't even exist before Batman the Animated Series. Yeah, I mean that you make a very good point there. And of course, I do remember that it was Michael and Sarah who provided the voice of Mr. Freeze in that series. He was a frozen scientist guy, even in the '60s show. Hey. But Ivy, no, Bull, Ivy decided whether you deserved it. She was a crazy activist originally. She no longer is a crazy activist. She's basically just Harley Quinn's girlfriend now. As we continue on. And again, a friendly reminder, if you haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So, as we continue on with the story here, Harley Quinn, or the article here, Harley Quinn. Look at that, the cracked heart with the sword in it. Who killed Harley Quinn? After years of playing the Joker's sidekick, Harley Quinn has been liberated to become practically the fourth pillar of the DC universe. In her early years, Quinn was just an ambitious psychiatrist at Arkham who made the mistake of falling in love with a Joker. Yeah, and let's not forget that Harley Quinn, I believe, what originated, it was one of those characters that actually originated on Batman the Animated Series. Much like in the same vein as um, Renee Montoya. She lived in the Joker's shadow for years, becoming defined by his crimes and basically appearing as an extension of him. Now, her name, of course, is Harleen Quinzel, shortened to Harley Quinn, as in Harlequin, a type of jester. Her liberation has exposed Quinn as nothing more than the victim of childhood trauma and lifelong abuse. Her deep desire to be seen was weaponized by her evil boyfriend, who was willing to turn her into a monster just to keep her under his control. The liberated version of Harley Quinn has become a fan favorite DC anti hero, with the live action version played by Margot Robbie in Suicide Squad 2016, Birds of Prey 2020, and The Suicide Squad 2021, deservedly transforming public perception of the character. Catwoman, Selena Kyle, one that has stuff going all the way back to oh, I didn't even no, I didn't even. I stopped feeling sympathy for Quinn after she separated from Joker. She no long she I think you meant to say no longer had the abusive relationship to shield her actions. Harley Quinn is the extension of Joker. She worked better as just Joker's girlfriend. DC doesn't need its own DC doesn't need its own version of Deadpool. Um, they already have a bunch of wacky characters. I agree Quinn is a worthless character without Joker. Hmm. At least from what I saw of her character in Batman the Animated Series, her interactions with Poison Ivy, I thought that was kind of interesting, quite honestly. Um, Kind of seeing the two of their, I know they expanded that more in the comics and all that. Um, Turning basically going from kind of just the hint of them being in a relationship in the cartoon. Of course, that's all they could do in a cartoon, since that was directed towards kids. To you know fleshing that out more in the comics. Catwoman, Selena Kyle. Pop culture shaped Selena Kyle as nothing more than a jewel thief and a criminal femme fatale for years. Despite being one of the most complex villains in the DC comics. Well, originally though, she did not start out as a femme fatale. Well, she was a jewel thief when she going all the way back to, um, you know, her first appearance in Batman #1. Um, At the growing, I think this other part from the comics wasn't developed till post crisis. Her being kind of like, you know, being kind of like a prostitute and all that. Growing up in a dysfunctional family with an abusive father was only the beginning of her struggles. However, despite experiencing lots of violence and witnessing horrific murders all her life, Selena remains one of the few Batman villains who won't kill even their worst enemies. She doesn't relish Gotham's crime and violence either, which is why she doesn't side with either Joker or the Riddler. At least that's modern times. Obviously, in her early, back in the '60s, they would rate more regularly. She is still selfish, which is why she steals, although she mostly targets corrupt officials and criminals. Since becoming Batman's love interest, Catwoman's anti-hero persona has become common knowledge, as people don't see her as a villain anymore. Batman even proposes to her because she reminds him of the good that still exists in the most damaged side of Gotham. Let's see. Killer Croc, Waylon Jones. There's quite a bit going on here in the conversation here. Let's see what you guys are. Because gay stuff wasn't allowed back then, and I believe it was better for it. Mm-hmm. I did not like Steven Universe as a kid. Catwoman didn't wear bondage gear until Adam West show. She was always a femme fatale. None of that other stuff is necessary to be a femme fatale. She just needs to be deceptively beautiful and dangerous. Anyways, Waylon Jones, Killer Croc here. Killer Croc, another Batman villain, whose redemption arc in the comics has gained a lot of popularity as the comics move further away from the trope villain seen on the screens. Waylon Jones has been the victim of neglect and abuse since his birth, all because of epidemiologic hyperkeratosis, a condition he has absolutely no control over. He does have criminal tendencies, although he only goes after people who have hurt him. Unless he suffers a mental breakdown or gets exposed to experimental compounds, which results in his infamous murder spree. However, at his core, Jones is a calm person who would always choose peace over violence. Unfortunately, he always finds himself on the wrong side of Gotham's underground, where many criminals like Bane and the Joker manipulate him to serve their selfish needs. In the end, Killer Croc is forced to become the monster that Gotham seems to so desperately want him to be. Given a choice and a little acceptance, he would be happy to live a normal life elsewhere. Clayface, Basil Carlo. Hmm. Killer Croc has always been a tragic character, sometimes never covered in the adaptations. Basso Carlo is another Batman rogue with a tragic story that leads to villainy. Um, Maybe in the more modern version, originally he was just an actor who tried to kill off the lead actress in a remake of a play of a movie he did. But who totally remains redeemable, unlike the senseless Batman villain portrayed by his on-screen versions. Most film versions present Carlo and Matt Hagen by extension through horror-inspired transformation with the capability to destroy cities. But underneath, Clayface really is just a lost soul struggling with trauma, identity crisis, and uncontrollable power. Post Prime Earth, Post Prime Earth, Carlo's thriving acting career is ruined when he is disfigured by a road accident, leading to dependence on Reno, the chemical that later gives him his monstrous appearance. With his perfect life gone, Carlo. So basically, though, it's playing more like Matt Hagen's similar Matt Hagen's origins in both the comics and in the Batman the Animated Series. Carlo comes to terms with his new reality as Clayface, leading to his descent into a life of crime. However, he doesn't lose touch with humanity, even in his darkest moments, which is why his redemption arc is popular in the comics. Bane. From a mindless brute, Batman and Robin, to a revolutionary zealot, The Dark Knight Rises, Bane's portrayal in pop culture rarely reflects the multi-layered character presented in the comics, who is only fighting for freedom the only way he knows how. Bane has one of the most tragic origin stories in the DC universe. Starting in Peñadura prison in the Caribbean island of Santa Prisca, where he was forced to serve a life sentence for his father's crime. Being used as the experimental subject of venom turns him into an addict, and while it enhances his physical strength, it also leads to his mental breakdown. Yeah, drugs can do that to you. In the beginning, Bane only picks a fight with Batman, believing it to be his destiny after the bat nightmares he had in prison. He has a change of mind. We realize that Batman is not his enemy. Whenever he gains control of himself, Bane always chooses peace over war, and even fights alongside Batman and to stop some of Gotham's biggest threats. All right, so there we go with that one. That's all we got for the article. For the articles for tonight. Already at the 42-minute mark. So now I'll kind of catch the last of the comments, or the most recent comments here, and then we'll get ready to move on to the wrestling wrap up. It meant something, or I meant something. What is the villain apologist article? It's almost laughable to. What is this villain apologist article? It's almost laughable to the point that the writer should be these villains' lawyer or something. Well, plus I don't know how much of the villain's history though this guy knows, because obviously, in terms of Catwoman, you go back, yeah, and I don't know if you were on me when we read a Catwoman story or not, Metal, but Catwoman, the whole like more sympathetic aspects of her being like a prostitute and all that didn't come along until post crisis, I believe. I think on Earth 2, she was just simply a femme fatale jewel thief. And then she had more of an outright costume on Earth 1, or during the Silver Age. Let's see. They retconned Clayface so many times. Well, and there's been like so. I think there's something like what 6 or 7 Clayface. There's of course Basso Carlo was the original one. There's another one who had a long history. Originally, he was just simply an actor who portrayed a character. Was upset when they decided to remake the movie that he had been known for. So he didn't, and then you had, of course, Matt Hagen, and then you had, and you had the Pain guy. So, but I think you had like 5 or 6 Clayfaces. It all came down to it. Original Clayface was just an insane actor who killed his studio heads because they remade his movie. Yeah, that is correct. Matt Hagen was a thug who just got Clay powers, a less sympathetic Sandman, essentially. It's kind of funny though. In the DCAU, they actually I think combined Hagen and Carlo into one character. So while it was Matt Hagen in name, they had him tied to like the whole. They had him tied to the whole actor aspect of it as well. Bye bye, Mike. Well, I'm sorry to see you go there. Um, I wasn't even aware they ever made her a prostitute, to be fair. I really only know her mostly from her original appearance to around the crisis and some media appearance. Yeah, I when I was doing some of the read ups on some of the books like back in the 2000s, yeah, there was a point where she actually was a prostitute. They talked quite a bit about that. And anyways, so now we're done with the article. So now what I'm going to do now, of course, now I'm going to look back over the weekend here. Look back at some of the I'm going to look back at some of the stuff that as John Cena retired this past weekend, and then AEW had its collision. So let's go ahead and take a look back at those. And then we'll start off actually with Saturday night's main event. I'll talk about that. So this past Saturday night's main event, the results of the show coming from the Capital One Center Arena in Capital One Arena in Washington D.C. with, of course, Wade Barrett, Michael Cole on commentary. Opening match saw in a battle of two champions here, a non-title match. Cody Rhodes and Obafemi went to a no contest when Drew McIntyre came out and interfered in the match. As Rhodes and Femi, of course, Cody Rhodes is currently the WWE Undisputed Champion and Obafemi the NXT Champion. This was obviously a match to help put Femi over, a bit more. But saw them kind of dispatch Drew McIntyre. And then in a women's match, Sol Ruka with Zarya in her corner defeated Bayley, who had Lyra Valkyria in her corner. As Ruka this past year has been real hot. She was at one point both the WWE Women's Speed Champion and the NXT Women's North American Champion. In a non-title tag team match, AJ Styles and Dragon Lee defeated the two young stars of Javon Evans and TNA X Division champion Leon Slater. And then in probably the one match that got a lot of heat here, a lot of negative heat, Gunther defeated John Cena via tap as John Cena tapped out to Gunther's sleeper. This match received a lot of hate because a lot of people did not like. I think people understood that John was going to want to put over Gunther, and I think a lot of people would have preferred seeing John pass out as opposed to tap out. But there was a lot of just heat on this match for how it ended. People were turning on Triple H for his booking decisions, but that's all that happened on Saturday night's main event. So now let's go ahead and talk a bit about what happened as of course AEW is building towards its World's End pay-per-view at the end of the year here, with the finals of the Continental Classic happening. as coming from the Utila Arena, Cardiff, in Cardiff, Wales, UK, with of course Nigel McGuinness, Tony Schiavone, and Don Callis on commentary. Opening match saw Swerve Strickland with Prince Nana in his corner defeat Josh Alexander. In a women's tag team match, current AEW women's champion Chris Statlander and former women's champion Jamie Hayter defeated the Sisters of Sin of Sky Blue and Julia Hart. In Blue League action in the Continental Classic, current CMLL champion Claudio Castagnoli and current IWGP World Heavyweight Champion Konosuke Takeshita went to a time limit draw, each earning 1 point and maintaining their tie atop the Blue League standards at 7 points apiece. In Gold League action, Mike Bailey defeated his tag team partner Kevin Knight in Jet Speed, getting now 6 points. In the main event, saw Mark Briscoe retain the TNT title over former champion Daniel Garcia. So that's, and then now looking ahead to tonight's Monday Night Raw here, as soon as we pull that one up. Looking ahead to tonight's Monday Night Raw, in the aftermath of John Cena's retirement match, see what they have planned for tonight. Actually, it looks like they're going to even be, well, I guess they're going to be taping SmackDown tonight as well. So, I guess to give them, because I guess they're going to be going out on tour. Doing it live. So coming from the Giant Center in Hershey, Pennsylvania, the Usos, Jay and Jimmy Uso, will be taking on the New Day of Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods in a battle of two former WWE World Tag Team Champions. In a match for the Women's Intercontinental title, Maxine Dupree will be defending the belt against Ivy Nile. Rey Mysterio is set to take on Logan Paul, and in a match for the Women's World title, Stephanie Bakura will be defending against Raquel Rodriguez. So we got some women's action tonight on Monday Night Raw. So that's all that's going down tonight. So that's all we got for the wrestling wrap-up, as it were. So now we're going to start to wrap things up with today being Monday, December the 15th, 2025. Let's go ahead and take a look back at this day in Niche history. So 55, 95, 2015, and 1985. All right. So first off, we're going to head back 70 years ago. Hello. Finally made it. Hello, Mike. Hey, Netsuri. Nice to see you again. Yeah, we're just about to wrap up the show. We're just on the This Day Niche History segment, as it were. So now what we're going to do, of course, first I'm going to head back 70 years ago, as on this date 70 years ago today, back in 1955. All right, so on this date 70 years ago today, the 20th issue of Maisie from Harvey Comics went on sale on this date back in 1955, it sold for 10 cents, with 32 pages. So the 20th issue of Maisie from Harvey Comics went on sale on this date back in 1955, 70 years ago. Oops. I knew it. Anyways, now getting ready to move on to the next piece of niche history as we move ahead to the year 1985. On this year, in the year 1985, Studio Dean's OVA Angel's Egg was released on this date back in 1985, 40 years ago today. Studio Dean's Angel's Egg was released on this date back in 1985. Angel's Egg is a Japanese animated experimental post-apocalyptic science fiction, a science fantasy OVA, written and directed by Mamoru Oshii, released by Tokuma Shoten on the 15th of December 1985. The film was a collaboration between artists Yoshitaka Amano and Oshii. The film stars two nameless characters, a young girl who protects an egg. So this is an OVA film, Egg, who bonds with a boy who has a dream about a bird. It was the final original project by Oshii and carries themes found in his other works. All right, so there we go with that. Now moving on to the next piece of niche history here. Now we move ahead to the year 1995. On this date in the year 1995, from the Stampede Corral in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, the Stu Hart tribute show took place. This was it was a show put on more or less by Stampede Wrestling, even though it wasn't per se wasn't under the Stampede banner, as it were. In the main event of the show, of the Stu Hart tribute show, Bret Hart defeated the British Bulldog for the WWF World Heavyweight Championship. Then, in a kind of a reunifying of a team, Bruce Hart and Brian Pillman reunited their Bad Company team from their days when they were teaming together in Stampede to defeat the Funk Brothers, Dory Jr. and Terry, via DQ. Razor Ramon successfully defended the Intercontinental title against Owen Hart. 1-2-3 Kid, a.k.a. Sean Waltman, defeated Keith Hart. Chris Benoit defeated Rad Radford. They did have some WWE talent here, too. And then the show opened up with Jerry Morrow and the Cuban Assassin defeating King Lao and Mike Anthony. So 30 years ago today, the Stu Hart tribute show from the Stampede Corral in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And finally, we move ahead to the year 2015. On this day in the year 2015, the second season of Uncle Grandpa completed its run on this date back in 2015. So 10 years ago today, the second season of Uncle Grandpa completed its run on Cartoon Network. All right, so with that being said, I thank everybody for being here tonight. Hope everybody enjoyed the show. We'll be back here with more niche news tomorrow. Of course, this Sunday, I'll be joined by Rex from Devil Flyer Momentum, and we'll be taking another trip down Comics History Lane. Be looking at comics that went on sale from Fawcett in July of 1940. So with that, I thank y'all for being here, and I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. Bye.